Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 1st of April, now it's almost 1 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my channel in which I share latest updates on the news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments and news that I like to share with you for this moment. But before I start, let me once again emphasize how grateful I am for your time, attention and support. It truly does means a lot to me, so thank you very much. I should note that our project, this channel, did survive previous months because of your support, and I hope we will go through these months also, and eventually this channel will develop as a successful source of information. I will try my best, of course, and yes, if you find this channel interesting, useful, and one that deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary, I hope you will, if you can and if you want to, you will support this project, and in that case, we will probably manage to create truly independent channel in Russia. So yes, that's been said. Let's talk about news now, and I will start with the RIA Novosti's report. This is yesterday's news, but very significant, and I did not talk about it in my yesterday's update because, as you know, I had to create some content for Patreon, and I went with my family to Moscow. So I will share information today with you, and I will give you my take on it. And basically, yesterday Putin did sign an order, which is about Russian foreign policy and principles that Russian foreign policy will be based on. And let me read it for you. I did translate main points from this order, and I will read it for you. So first is that Russia does not consider itself an enemy of the West and does not isolate itself from it, does not have hostile intentions. That's first point. So Moscow is not positioning itself as an enemy of the West. It's Western elites that are conducting themselves as an enemy of Russia and basically entire world at this stage. So next point is that Moscow is counting on the realization by Western countries, Western elites basically, of the fatality of confrontation and on return to equal interaction. To be honest, I doubt that Western elites will return or even consider to conduct interaction with Russia or with any other country with respect and equal rights. It's just impossible. Western elites are incapable of doing so. But still, that's a diplomatic way from Russian government to say that, you know what, you have a chance. But if you don't take this chance, then you will be forced to deal with consequences. Next point is that Russia considers Washington's course as the main source of risk for its security and international peace. Yet again, it's hard to disagree on this point because Washington, US elites, US ruling elites, for decades now are main threat for peace on this planet. It's just too obvious, nothing to argue about. And when we're talking about Washington, and so of course you should take in account all of these colonies that Washington has in Europe, in continental Europe, because come on, and it's hard to say that any of the EU member states or NATO member states are truly sovereign states. No, they are colonies of Washington and partially London. Let's continue. And next point is that priority will be given to removing the vestiges of US dominance in the world. So that's when we are coming to most interesting part, because Russian foreign policy will conduct itself, will push narrative that will minimize, not just narrative, but Russian foreign policy will be active to minimize influence of Washington and London, Western elites, basically. And that's inevitable stuff, because, as I said, main danger for humanity right now and for last God knows how many decades comes from Western elites. So next point, Moscow seeks to ensure security equally for all countries on the basis of the principle of reciprocity. Reciprocity. What that sentence even means, man? Let me translate it, because I'm not sure that I ever heard this word before. Okay. Reciprocity, взаимность. Okay. You all know English better than I do, so you probably understood this straight away. So, yes, next point of particular importance is the comprehensive deepening of ties and coordinations with China and India. Yes, that's also obvious matter. I believe not just China and India, but also South Africa and Brazil, BRICS member states, will be priority for Russian foreign policy, but not just them, because Russia is very active in Middle East and Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Iran, Iraq. They are very important states for Russia. Also, I believe Lebanon, Russia should be more proactive in Lebanon. And I do believe there is Russia can play a good role in Lebanon's, to support Lebanon, to to help Lebanese society to overcome difficulties that they are enduring for so many decades now, because of hostilities from Israel and the West, basically. And yes, it's also obvious, of course, China and India will be main partners for Russia, because they are, they're gonna be biggest economies in the world in the next 20, 30 years. And Russia do have a good relationships with both countries. It's, obvious stuff. And one more point, the main goal in near abroad is to near abroad. That's how in Russian we are saying about former Soviet republics, near abroad. So main goal in the near abroad is to turn the regions into the zone of peace, good neighbor lines, and prosperity, which is also strategic interest of Russia, to make sure that on its borders states are stable, states have good relationships, and there is no confrontation between them or between them and Russia. Understandable. Everything is understandable from this order that Putin did sign, and I believe this document will decide, will influence Russian foreign policy, at least as long as Russia has a government that is not fully controlled by the West. Because all these points that I just read for you truly comes from interests of Russia. It's nothing to really argue there about it, and from interests of the world. I believe no matter where you are living, you will probably say that yes, all those points are quite understandable, especially when it comes to relationships with US, because US is a main threat, and if for some reason neoliberals and neocons will continue to hold on power in US after 2024, also I think world will end up in a dark place, because US foreign policy will become even more hawkish, even more aggressive. And that will probably cause not just difficulties in relationships between US and Russia, but also between US and China, and probably between US and the Middle Eastern states. Maybe even states in the Pacific region, not just China, but also India, Indonesia, probably. So yes, let's hope that U.S. Citizens will manage to take care of those neoliberals and neocons and put them in garbage. Otherwise, world will be in dark place. That's too obvious. Let's continue now, and yet again, just look at it, man. RBK news agency is reporting that according to Associated Press, Trump will receive at least, let me translate this for you. As you know, those neoliberals are trying to get rid of Trump, and now Associated Press is reporting that Trump faces at least one criminal charge, at least one criminal charge, and who knows how will situation develop. They may even arrest him. Because they knew Trump is the main candidate to win next presidential election. Some of you may like this person, Trump. Some of you may don't. Me personally, I don't really have opinion about him, because he was president for one term, and when it comes to foreign policy, he was quite successful in connection to negotiate some stability, to achieve some stability in the Korean Peninsula. He had a meeting with the leader of North Korea, and as you can see, situation on the peninsula is stable, and quite possible because of Trump's activity when he was president. But other than that, to be honest, I cannot remember any successful foreign moves from Trump, especially in relationships with Russia. He was talking about it, necessity to deal with problems between the sides and to establish good working relationships, but he was unable to achieve anything in direction, because neocons and neoliberals did not let him do what he was openly saying. And I'm not sure even if he will become president again, I'm not sure that he will be successful in these terms. But yet again, that's the best chance for now, because just recently DeSantis, another candidate, possible candidate from Republicans, he just went in interview with Piers Morgan. He just went in full on neoliberal and neocon. He was talking with the talking points of neoliberals and neocons, and if he will become next US president, I don't think that Putin will have a talk with him, because for what? Why? Only difference between Biden and DeSantis will be that DeSantis will read without mistakes papers that he will be given by true rulers of the USA. When Biden is struggling to read that papers, that will be only difference, really. So let's continue now. Let's continue. When it comes to this development, man, I know Trump is very popular in USA, and if neoliberals will not stop and if they will push all the way, including arrest of Trump, that may even cause some local scale military uprising, because U.S. Citizens have plenty of weapons on their hands, especially traditionalists that are supporting Republican Party, and they may be very upset if anything like that will happen. If Trump will be arrested, and they may, take matters in their hand, and they have right, because Second Amendment, as I understand, exactly about rights of U.S. citizens to defend themselves against corrupt government, from corrupt government, and they do truly have corrupt government. You cannot get more corrupt than right now, because Biden and Biden family is entrenched with Ukrainian this corruption deals, man, up to neck, and everyone knows that. And God knows how many money, how much billions they did made right now, since this conflict began, since special military operation began, because from 100 and something billion that was formally sent to Ukraine, only 20% did really went to Ukraine. Rest of it end up on accounts of military industrial complex and close and people that are close to Biden's administration and Biden and his family. So you know what is the deal there. Let's continue now, and yes, at this point I will say a few words about my channel. I did already, but still, this is the only place I can advertise my channel, really, because I cannot afford to advertise on YouTube. I don't even know if YouTube allows channels from Russia to do advertise. And yes, if you think this channel is interesting, useful, has some potentials, and deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary as an independent channel from Russia, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal or subscribe to my Patreon page. Patreon, as I said, Patreon is very, very important because it gives me this additional information about funds that I have to deal with everyday life, so it's truly important. But anyway, all help is important, of course, from like and comment to small donation. Everything is important. Everything is keeping this channel going. So thank you very much for your support and attention, guys. Let's continue. This is RIA Novosti, and we have statements from Peskov, and he did spoke about statements that Lukashenko made yesterday, and he did made quite statements, and I will touch on that just in a second. But Peskov addressed one of the statements that Lukashenko made about Russian and Ukrainian militaries that don't really want to fight and are making some deals between each other on the front line to keep some peace. And I don't know, maybe. And Peskov said that Russian militaries are executing orders as usual. So basically, he denied that Russian side has some Russian soldiers on the front line have some dealings with the opposite side, but that's the usual stuff on the front lines historically. At some point, sides are starting to talk to each other. That was many cases of like that was in during the First World War, during the Second World War also, and in any war probably in any conflict you will see that kind of developments, but I don't believe that this is a large-scale phenomenon. No, probably in some areas that are not really active. In that areas, maybe sides are talking, but you know, in general, that's that's impossible. So this is RIA Novosti, and now I will share with you this information about statements that Lukashenko, president of Belarus, did made yesterday. He had a big speech yesterday, and one of his statements was about peace in Ukraine, and he did a call to Kiev and Moscow to immediate ceasefire, to stop operations on the front line and movements of armored vehicles and personnel. Good try, I should say, nice try, but we all know that this is non-starter. I mean, no one in Kiev has right to make such a decision. So in this case, Lukashenko should call Washington or London and Moscow, because Kiev is out of this game. You know what I mean. It's Washington and London that calling the shots. So yes, nice try, but we will not see peace and peaceful negotiations, at least before Washington and London will decide it's time to have some peace talks. And this is not going to happen, at least for 3 to 5 months, at least. Maybe before end of this year, we will see some peace negotiations, but not now. Let's continue now, and this is interesting. This is interesting news. We have TASS News Agency's report, which is based on statements from official in Zaporozhye region, Vladimir Rogov, and according to him, Russian intelligence reporting that more and more German and Polish-speaking military personnel is noted in Zaporozhye direction. Let me show you on the map this area. This is Zaporozhye direction towards this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. And according to Rogov, Russian side did listening to radio communication of Ukrainian armed forces, and in the communication more and more Polish language and the German language have been heard, and this is absolutely not surprising for me and probably for you, because I was saying, I don't even know how long now, and how I did say it how many times, that all this Western military equipment that was promised to Ukraine and has been delivered to Zelensky's regime, including main battle tanks, Western-made battle tanks. I believe that equipment will be operated by NATO member state soldiers that will be enlisted on Western PMCs, just for plausible deniability, because if some of them are captured, then NATO member states always can say that, you know what, they used to be our soldiers, but now they leave army and they are now PMC mercenaries. But in reality, we all know, I'm quite sure that would be a case, and now we have basically confirmation that Western military equipment, including Western-made battle tanks, are operated by Western soldiers. And when Zelensky's regime will conduct counteroffensive in direction of this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia, and when Russian side will destroy all those units that will try to cut this, all those formerly Ukrainian units that will try to establish control over this land bridge, we will probably learn that tens and hundreds of citizens of US and European states died during that operation, because they were not just crews of Western-made equipment, but they were also maintenance crew, and probably some manpower also will be sent to work with Western-made equipment, Western tanks and Western armored personnel carriers. So in my opinion, in this operation, when Zelensky's regime will start counteroffensive in direction of Azov Sea, probably 2,000 to 3,000 Western military personnel will be part of it, maybe even more. And yes, Western states will receive all those soldiers, maybe not all, but majority of those soldiers, as a Gruz 200. Gruz 200 means KIA. So Western society should get ready for that kind of development, because I was very critical about possibility of counteroffensive of Zelensky's regime in direction of Bakhmut, and I have my reasons, and I explained why I was critical and why I was thinking that there will be no large-scale counteroffensive there. But I'm quite sure Zelensky's regime will conduct counteroffensive in direction of this this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. It's a matter of 3 to 5 weeks, probably less than that. And after all, Washington pushing for this counteroffensive, and as I said many times, Zelensky don't really has a voice in these matters. I mean, he will do whatever he is told to do. Same time, we have RT's report here that Mark Milley, Joint Chiefs Chair Mark Milley, says that achieving Kyiv's military objectives will be very difficult. This person is probably one of the few in current administration in US that are able to speak his mind, at least time to time. Just recently, he was also talking about ambitions that Zelensky has, and he said openly that it will be impossible to achieve Zelensky's ambitions with military means. And now he's basically repeating himself and saying that Ukrainian armed forces will find it very hard to achieve the military goals and to establish full control over the entire territory of former Ukraine. Because today's Ukraine and Ukraine before special military operation, it's two different states. Now, Donbass, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions, they are part of Russia. Crimea is part of Russia since 2014. So, of course, Zelensky's regime will never establish control over these territories. And what Mark Milley is saying is just some obvious stuff. And with these kind of statements, basically what they are doing is that preparing ground. Maybe that's why Mark Milley is allowed to speak his mind, because this way Washington is preparing ground for minimize pressure from the society when Russian side will establish control over the Bakhmut, over the Chesiv Yar, over the Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, and when the Russian side will destroy entire grouping of Zelensky's regime in Zaporozhye and Kherson directions that will be involved in counteroffensive towards Azov Sea. After that, we will probably see open involvement of Poland and a few more NATO member states in these matters, in this conflict. But even then, once they will realize that they have nothing to do here, they will start negotiation with the Russian side and Western Ukraine. Maybe Kiev will stay under Western control, and the rest of the Ukraine, former Ukraine, from Kharkiv to Odessa, will become controlled by Russian side. I did spoke about these matters many times before, no need to repeat myself really. So let's continue now, and we have statement from Shoigu. This statement is from this morning. RIA Novosti is reporting that according to Russian Defense Ministry, Russian military-industrial complex did manage to produce military equipment and ammunition many times as rate as it was before special military operation. And yes, what can I say? Russian economy, at least for now, is able to cope with this conflict. It's very expensive, of course, to conduct so long such a scale military operation, and I don't know if Russian military-industrial complex is able to produce enough equipment and shells to make sure that army on the front line has everything for 100%. But at least Defense Ministry and the military industrial complex is working to increase its production rate. I just see, like a few minutes ago, I see some skeptical comments about this information on Russian Telegram channels, and this skepticism may have some reasoning behind it. So that's why I think it's very important that China should start supporting Russia militarily in terms of military equipment as soon as possible, because in my opinion, it will be very helpful for Russian side, especially when it comes to strike drones and when it comes to artillery, including multi-launch rocket systems and ammunition for them. Let's continue now, and this is RIA Novosti's, TASS news agency's report about yet another package of U.S. military aid to Ukraine. This time it's $2.6 billion. So yes, I mean, Washington is printing those dollars like hell, man, and this time they are sending military equipment for $2.6 billion. This package will include basically mainly ammunition for military equipment that was already delivered to Zelensky's regime. And as it was before, most of this amount will end up on banking accounts of U.S. military industrial complex and congressmen, Biden's family, and U.S. senators and congressmen that are actively pushing this constant constant sending of constant wave of new and new military aid packages to Zelensky's Nazi regime. Let's continue now. And how long is this video? 35 minutes. Okay. So this is RIA Novosti's report. And right now, by the way, news just come up on RIA Novosti that Germany, for now, it's not deciding to send additional Leopard tanks to Ukraine because they don't really have any left, probably. Because I would not be surprised if we learn that Germany sent to Ukraine all battle-ready Leopard tanks that they had. That's how crazy Germany's current leadership is. So let's continue. This is RIA Novosti's report, and we have statement from Deputy of Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, Melnik, who said that, they are crying all the time, and this Zelensky and his henchmen, they are crying all the time and asking for more money and more weapons just constantly. And this is exactly the same example, same situation. This Andrei Melnik is crying in interview with the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, that's a German newspaper, I guess, and he is crying that Zelensky's regime don't really have enough Western-made battle tanks to conduct successful counteroffensive operation. He is talking about 50-60 tanks that Zelensky's regime received yet, but I believe this number is much bigger in reality. And in my opinion, and according to some sources in Russian Telegram channels, Zelensky's regime may already receive from 100 to 150 Western-made battle tanks, mainly Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 tanks, but also British Challenger 2 tanks. And in coming weeks, quite possible that we will see Abrams tanks also in the battlefield. Maybe because US does have Abrams stockpile in Europe, and they may just transfer those tanks. It will take only days for Washington to do so. But as you can see, no matter how many weapons Western elites will send to Zelensky and his henchmen, they will continue to cry. It's never enough for them because, they have to manage. It's a difficult business for them. They have to manage to sell some weapons on the black market and make some money. At the same time, they have to give some weapons to Ukrainian armed forces also. So, of course, they want some more weapons, man, so they can continue their dealings on the black market. It's simple. It's simple, man. So I would not be surprised if one day we will find out that from some military packages that West formally did send to Ukraine, nothing has arrived in Ukraine and was sold straight away from US or from Germany or from some other countries to a third party. This is a huge business for them, and they don't care about lives of ordinary citizens, and they don't care basically about anything and anyone except themselves and except power for themselves. And that's it. Let's continue, and this is quite interesting information. This is from yesterday, and many channels did comment on it, and I will give you my take. I'm talking about statements that Hungary's Prime Minister Orban made about possibility that EU will send some peacekeepers in Ukraine. This is not the first time that we are hearing about this stuff. Months or two ago, I did report that in EU leadership circulating idea to send some peacekeepers or under umbrella of peacekeeping missions send European militaries to the front line. But yesterday, Russian side did address this issue and said that they will not recognize as a peacekeepers no Western military personnel in Ukraine, and that means that they will be hunted down, obviously, and then EU don't really have a military. So what peacekeepers they can send? They don't have a military personnel. So if any one EU member state will send its forces, and no matter how they're gonna call them, peacekeepers in Ukraine, peacekeepers in Eurasian continent, peacekeepers on EAR, or galactic peacekeepers, it just don't really matter. They will be destroyed. Russian side will take them as enemies on the battlefield, and they will be destroyed. And in that case, everyone should understand in the Western elites that it will be difficult for them to use fifth article, because fifth article is defensive one. So if one of the NATO member states have been targeted unprovokedly, then fifth article can be introduced. But if NATO member state will send its forces to other side to become a part of conflict, fifth article will not work in that case. And I don't know, Polish elites and elites of Baltic states, elites of Slovakia, for example, and all the others that are very active Russophobes and very actively are trying to spearhead this anti-Russian offensive that Western elites are conducting. They should think twice, and societies in that country should also think, because at one day they may find that it's too late to do anything no more, because it just will be too late. Only so much Russian side can tolerate before it will start using extreme measures. Everyone should, remember this. Only so much can Russia tolerate before some extreme force will be used. And Russia do have force that will, destroy all the countries that will, deserve it. Let's say this way. All the countries that will, threaten Russia. So that's why I'm saying the societies in the West, it seems like only small parts of societies in the Western world are truly thinking how dangerous this whole situation is. But these informed groups of citizens they are too few really. Majority just listening propaganda, and maybe they are believing that if not today, tomorrow they will, occupy Moscow or something like that. I don't know what they're thinking, or if they are even able to think, because situation is truly dangerous. And as I said, man, it's only so much Russia can tolerate before it will start, making some big moves. And let's continue now. This is RIA Novosti's report, and very, very significant development. It's also about Ukraine and Ukraine's Orthodox Church. As you know, Zelensky's regime, with the support of US, and not just US, are actively pushing Ukrainian Orthodox out of the country. Basically, they are prosecuting Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And this morning we had the information that leader of Kievo-Pechorskaya Lavra, Namestnik, I don't know how you will translate this. Let me translate it. So governor is not right word. That's why I find it difficult to translate it. But leader of Kievo-Pechorskaya Lavra, have been put under house arrest. And Zelensky's regime, those criminals, are now forcefully trying to establish control over the Kievo-Pechorskaya Lavra. They are committing sin, man. They are committing this is crime in every dimension. This is utter crime. But do you hear anything in the Western media? Of course not. Of course not. And I believe this development may provoke or may force many Ukrainian soldiers, including officers, to think again for what they are fighting on the front line and why they are fighting Russians, when main danger for them coming from and their families and their way of life, their culture, their history is coming from Zelensky and his Nazi regime and the Western masters of that regime.